Hello everyone, and welcome to Greach Workshops, a guided discussion about teaching and diversity in the Groovy community. I'll be moderating today's discussion. If we haven't met already, I'm Jen Strater. You may know me as the co-founder of the organization Gr8Ladies, and I also am a senior consultant at Object Partners. If you'd like to follow along, or after these are on GitHub as well, my tag is JL Strater. So it's a little bit of background. I have a lot of experience in the diversity space from this organization, Gr8Ladies. So we founded it about 1.5 years ago as an organization for the support of women in whether it's Groovy, Grails, Griffin, Gr8, any of the related technologies. We have 4 main missions. That's education, professional development, networking, and then retention among women in the community as well. We currently have our first chapter in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I'm located, but we are looking to expand as well. As part of the education mission of Gr8Ladies, we've started this Greach Workshops initiative. So Greach Workshops is about creating free and low-cost, usually weekend or outside work courses, where the audience is either a beginner who's never programmed before. This course is usually led by my co-founder, Allison, and she'll start all the way from some beginner HTML, CSS, and lead up through a basic scaffolded Rails application by the end of the weekend. I normally work on the more experienced developers track, and I've done an intro to Groovy and then split that up into different modules. We've done functional programming, testing with Spock and TDD, and just a basic intro to Rails as well. We do run this all through the Minneapolis Groovy community, usually from our local users group, the mailing list. Yes?
Getting my voice, roughly.
Better, hopefully.
Anyway,
No, thank you. Yeah, so like I said, we're all based on volunteers. We are hoping to do another workshop in the spring, and also expanding out into other areas as well. We hope to start a class or do a basic session on just how to get into speaking and expand on that a little bit more to get more women speakers in the community as well. So the goal of today's session is kind of to start a dialogue about some of the things that are happening in the Groovy community and what we might be able to do to expand even further by evaluating the current teaching methods, going about how to solve what some people call the skill shortage, discuss the role of diversity in the community. Hopefully we can get to some solutions from all of you. And if we have time at the end, I do have a section on some lessons that we learned from Greach Workshops. Otherwise, it is available on the GitHub slides, or slides. So as a little bit of background, I'm going to do some raise your hand type things. How did you first learn how to program? How many, like me, went to a traditional university, studied computer science or related technology? So a good number. And then either like math, physics, or related major, and then kind of sidestepped into. No. I know that I met some that have gone, especially the math and physics that are related. 2-year community college track. Okay. So there's also online universities and code camps and that type of situation I think too. Okay. So
I think the point might be that you did not learn programming.
Right. To get into programming and
Yeah, but it goes the other way around. I went to university and started computer science because I
learned before. Right. Sorry. Including that into went through. And how does that compare to how you first learned Groovy? I think it's only, university is still just getting started, but hopefully that's something we'll continue to see more of. How many, like me, learned it on the job? Okay, so that seems to be the common. Outside of work, books, blog posts, other media. Okay. And then workshops, conferences. Hopefully I've covered all of the different avenues for Groovy. So, like I said, I wanted to kind of touch on two different challenges or things that I think that we could discuss today. The first of those is called the skills shortage, and that's the idea that there are lots of companies looking to hire, and especially I know when the company I was at before posted a job, we get lots of applications, but not necessarily in the skills that we need. So this has been labeled the skills shortage, and kind of how we can bring more Groovy developers into the community. The second one that is definitely the lack of diversity, particularly in my expertise in women in tech. So, to the skills shortage, sometimes companies may, especially in the US, use immigration or outsourcing to other companies. But there's also options, including what we're trying to do with these weekend courses. Employer-paid skills training is a big one, and getting the employers to pay for that training, as well as hiring new grads and offering training. So the second part is, what is diversity? Just to make sure everybody's up to speed on the same page. So, little exercise. Imagine you are in a chat room or some kind of thing where you don't have a picture, no nothing. Take a couple minutes to kind of try and, what 5 words would you use to describe yourself? I am, or up to 5 words. Thought exercise. And yeah, you can discuss with your neighbors. Does anyone need more time? I'll continue. Okay. So normally the things that we think about when we describe ourselves are the different traits that make up who we are. So they may be physical attributes, whether you're tall or short. They may be personality traits, your gender identity, race, ethnicity, etc., profession, education, and maybe some information on your background. So a little thing I like to think about diversity is about embracing the value that we all have from all of those different individual differences and traits. Okay. So in order to increase diversity, there's lots of different tactics that organizations and different groups that are tackling this problem may address. Either barriers to entry by offering scholarships or childcare, particularly for parents, that's a new topic. Marketing and advertising. There's this idea that said, especially in the women in tech space, don't just take a cake. And what that kind of means is that it's not just about saying, oh, this is for women. It's make it more inclusive and there's a lot more behind it. Diversity in your images and gendered pronouns, especially in recruiting. Okay. So now that we've kind of gone over the two topics I'd like to talk about, what can we do as a community, particularly in recruiting? I think that there are some other students that we could go after. Traditionally, a lot of the training has been geared towards people with a background in education in Java, but there's lots of other opportunities to grow and expand the community as well. This is getting it into the university system, working professionals that are looking for a career change. This is one of the things that we've been working with, someone who may be in a QA or a BA, so quality assurance or a business analyst. Especially, like, I don't know if the Mutual of Omaha case where they were teaching their financial analysts to code in Groovy. There's lots of ways that you can expand the community there as well. Other developers outside of the Java community, so my co-founder at Lesson came from Python. I had a little bit of experience before in PHP, so there's other communities that we can reach out to as well to convert. And then there's the idea that people may be returning to the workforce, so there's the re-education and the skills piece as well. So in addition to the traditional education system, there are some other methods, and I'm just going to go over a few of them. I think everyone in here might be up to date on all of the different types. The first one is the idea of a code school. So code schools are generally based on learning a particular skill. In the US, they're generally 9 to 12 weeks. So here's two examples that I used because code schools have a very broad range. Some are very structured, some are not. Flatiron School is one that's definitely very constant, but very focused and very structured. On the other end is the Recurse Center. They used to be known as the Hacker School, and they're completely opposite end of the spectrum, completely free. There's even scholarships for people to live in New York while they're attending it. They've now gone to the phrase of it's a retreat instead of a school, so that you can kind of bring your own project and learn how to program through there. If you're still looking for an in-person session, you may be interested in learning weekend courses, and this is where the Greach Workshops initiative fits in. So we've got stack-focused, various experience levels. If you aren't familiar, there's other groups doing this as well, including Rails and Python. You can also get into the online space. I broke down online courses into 3 different types. Either a traditional university can offer it for credit. They're all online universities, and then there are one-time classes. You may have heard of MOOCs, they're expanded way beyond that as well. And then the idea of different formats for learning. So there's traditional class settings, and then there's self-paced or kind of work on your own. So here's some examples of some self-paced courses as a resource for anyone that's looking at them online. Okay, so in summary, hopefully we've seen that there are many different ways to learn programming, and that every individual has learned and will continue to learn in different ways. So it's important to have different options available. Okay. So now, hopefully to the discussion section. As the first question, do you think you would have benefited from another format for learning Groovy? And related technologies, of course, however you got into first got into it. Would anyone like to start? Jeff.
So I personally learned from mostly on my own outside of work, and yeah, I think I would have benefited a lot from being able to experience it when I was still in college and things like that, or university.
Yes.
with actual material or something like that.
Yeah, so that's, my next question is, does Groovy has potential as a language for beginners? And having like a centralized curriculum, yeah, that would be a good open source thing to do. I think we've started a little bit of the content, open sourcing some of our content for the Greach Workshops, but right now it's mostly been Allison and I and several of our friends in Minneapolis. Yes.
You guys at UCL in London, mostly by Gr8 tried using Groovy as the first programming language in first year undergraduate level.
We did.
And I thought it was an excellent experiment. The problem is that the standard CS mentality decided to change that because Groovy is too easy, too nice. Again, two
Did they release any information on what they might have learned from that?
difficult to tell really. But what they did do, Graham took the Groovy console source as base and put a maze running game on top of it, which went down extremely well, because even students of 18 still like to play. And learning from playing is something that most adults have forgotten how to do. So I think Groovy certainly has potential to define the beginning. I think a lesson we got from the UK curriculum where learning programming is now a forcible part of the school curriculum from age 5 through to age 18. And so you've got a completely new sort of beginner there. And what works for them actually also works for adults. Playing games, writing stuff to make robots do certain things, it all adds to fun. And I think we should get back to having fun. I think that's, if we're going to have some notion of a sponsored curriculum and a sponsored set of tools to learn, I think we should have fun at the centre.
Yes.
I have a friend who is programming background role and supporting her recruitment. So I told her that we get Groovy because we don't need to boilerplate Java. And so I gave her a Groovy rebook. This is how I use it now for myself. She was extremely confused about what is Groovy and what is Java. Even when she Groovy for process. I don't know if I know flow and drawing concepts and but really see the difference. Because she didn't know Java at all. Program language also so this was her first language. So we can use what is Java and she was my experience.
Yeah.
I can understand the problem there, because from the outset we pitched Groovy to the current Java community as something that you can pick up to do dynamic programming next door to your Java stuff. And almost every item of marketing we've done over the last 10 years has been aimed at that audience. And so here we've got someone very completed the audience who's been slightly confused because we don't have that material.
And do you think that more training curriculum, doing an open source project would help with that confusion? Yes.
Want something for real program readiness, you need to do it very different. You need to start from scratch and don't refer to what creating my channel here. Do it how you want.
What content should be included? And I had a few ideas of things that we kind of tossed around in our Great Workshops discussions. So, and this goes to the beginner decision of, it definitely varies on what kind of background information you should bring in. Does anyone have any particular opinions? Yes.
But I think the main advice that the most important one is missing, and that's the concept. I have no way to learn Groovy syntax and I don't know what is functionals, what are functions, what are inherited things, what are variable objects.
Yes.
So all of this is pretty much concept.
And so that's one of, talking about concepts, particularly with the beginner class, trying to explain object-oriented programming was a particular challenge, and that speaks to the content or concepts.
That's traditionally something that's done in a very bad way in universities as well.
Experiences.
Yeah, but basically the idea that we learn better if we are playing in games. But the kids learn programming languages. We don't teach object-oriented programming today. We teach something else. And by the way, this happens to be a double, but just after they already came. So I see the benefit of it makes a lot of sense that we have the right construct, the right concepts. But starting with them, for some people, it's good, and for others, it's a huge awesome. So I suppose that it's a matter of sensing the audience. If there's definitely no previous knowledge of computer science or from other in your careers, perhaps it's better to avoid these concepts at the beginning and then introduce them organically. I will also put a lot of stress in testing people showing the framework. This one is I like to call it the Reeducation book from the economics of Groovy. Well, the first thing that shows besides the syntax is you do testing. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but you make a test and then you continue to do it.
That's one of the things that we did, because right now, or the last couple of times, we left testing as a module at the end. But we've been having some debates as to how to bring it in earlier. Yes?
I think kind of the same line as Russell mentioned. What's missing on your 5-point here is motivation. So what is the motivation for learning to program Groovy? And Russell's going to take there. Well, I want to have success in completing this game, and in order to do that, I need to use models some steps, do some commands. And I've worked with education at the universities on Denmark, especially also with mathematicians that has to learn the program. Because it's not immediately clear to them what they can solve with it. They're not motivated to learn the program until just another topic. So they thought it's not important. I think it's really important to showcase something that you cannot solve unless you have the tools.
The bottom line there is that we need as much to focus on these points. And I would argue still that concepts are very important in the same way as that all the other points are important. And I agree with you.
motivational consensus learning introduce pieces of organically this concept. I think we need game idea is a very, very good one. We need some kind of motivational task or project that needs to be done. And then the rest is more or less dropping into place. Okay.
At the end of the language personal ideas.
It's a point that if you're teaching programming, people that have no prior knowledge about programming, I wouldn't let them start ideas. I would give them a very small process that goes exactly. Not even to the hierarchy that we require. There should be small, short programs. And that's enough for a while. The only later, when we get more complexity, we start is the other hand. If you're dealing with people and that's their fifth or sixth programming language already, and they're used to ideas already, normally, then you are only, they feel like badly treated if you don't give them their ideas. So it's really depending very lot on what people are dealing with.
I'm sorry, I didn't see.
No, certainly.
Okay. Yes.
The psychology of programming interest group, which is actually a worldwide thing, but it's focused in Europe and the UK. This year they have a bit of a special on training and education of programming. And Gr8 is leading that, so you might want to contact them to get some ideas from the perspective of the psychology of it. So whereas we've got practical experience of doing these things, they've got practical experience of experimenting on people doing these things. Because individuals, when they reflect on their own behaviours, invariably wrong. You're not good at understanding what you yourself do mentally. Whereas the psychology program is not doing an external activity. And so therefore they're finding real facts about how people learn and all that sort of stuff. So I'll use the end of something to get in touch about.
Thanks. So, for people who have taught a course, whether it's to experienced or novices, what has traditionally been, I'm ahead of myself, sorry. What teaching styles work best for learning or teaching? This was the idea that we're talking between like the code schools, whether you do specific examples, have a guided session, or do more of a project, like bring your own project. That's where the motivation thing comes in, by having a project that you're deeply invested in and having it see it through. And then the format, whether it's self-guided or a group setting. Particular opinions? Yes, Stu.
I think it really depends on the student. If it is learning programming from the very scratch, I think that's the task of you best served with doing yourself. Like juggling with balls, you can do that by looking at it and probably fail miserably while doing it, practicing well, which is a team issue. Whereas if it's someone who was already prior knowledge of programming, well, doing it in a group and pair programming might be very good.
Yes.
I'm trying to avoid dominating things.
It's okay.
The one thing that's perhaps missing from there is the feedback loop. People doing things is fine, but what they then need is someone in a sort of mentoring role to then give the feedback so that they can begin to understand what right and what wrong with what they're asked to do a particular project or an example. And it's not the doing, it's the feedback and reflection on the feedback is where the learning actually happens. So I think I would add that to this sort of meta thing. Any
thinking there's like the online, it's like Khan Academy, and some of the ones where you work through, and how we could integrate feedback other than your answer is right or wrong in something that's like a walkthrough or a guided example.
So, code reviews.
Code reviews?
I don't say code reviews, besides the code system. So the storytelling you're wrong, when people did that, it wasn't helpful. So going through the answer, say, well, yes, this works and this could be better, perhaps it could be written in a more idiomatic way, or maybe in the future you could this or that, so there are different ways that the person that is can be good.
There's yeah, I mean, coming up with a script that comes up with the right answer doesn't necessarily mean that it's written when it's efficient or the same quality, style, and all of that. So that's some interesting things to think about. I saw another hand. Yes.
Yeah, I have seen that in course in Coursera, that first after you submit something, you get a peer review from other students, and after that, you get a review from a professor. And I think that's a great idea. So you see the solution from other students, and after that you get that progress. Progress on your
That's one big thing about examples of this project. I think you start with examples to get used to the abstracts, to get an impression of the concept and everything. But you really learn this only if you start making something bigger, so you have to build it and think through all the problems and do environment. Only then the knowledge you gain becomes of existence, so to say.
And I refer to the same friend that I was to learn Groovy. When she wanted to have some real project work on, and asked her to see where you were today and how there are there problems that you want to solve at your where you work. And she thought, oh, that was one problem to solve. Then she worked on that problem and made various applications to solve the problem. That was her domain. She put the name on it. She thought this was her thing. So it was not much easier. She could ask colleagues to work to do that or solve the problem. And only have to talk to me about which so I really offer the results that we should work on the project.
Continuing on. For someone who's taught a course before, at whichever level, going back to the diversity piece, what has been your typical audience? Is it beginners, experienced programmers? Is that what you expect? Yes.
Undergraduate universities were referred to typical CS audience got less and less women. For a period in the early 90s, it was sort of dominated in the UK by traditional white Anglo-Saxon type. That's just looked like. Select from people who are foreign. We've got a little bit of racial diversity in the mid-90s, late 90s. I think it's pure speculation associated with the rise of salaries for junior programs and it being seen as the place to be. I think it was really the dot-com bubble on its way up before it burst. I think there's been some efforts to do diversity in the UK universities, but it's actually application driven, and so they don't have that much control. It's really down to parents, children, and society in general. Since 2005, since 2007, I've been doing a lot of commercial training activity, and there's some really interesting differences. You look at program groups, there's still a lot of white Anglo-Saxon males, but amongst testers, the actual gender differentiation is there's 1 or 2 courses I get 8 women, but they're all tested. I can't remember, programs in testers was the label that they were given. They're basically test programs. And that there's an interesting difference in the gender separation from that. But typically where I'm going, there's actually very few non-whites, which I actually find worrying. So that's the experience I've got. What do I expect? Whatever comes absorbed. Because if you do anything else, you're going to pressure your performance during the workshops.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, I've done and have a lot of background in the women in tech, and there's lots of organizations, especially in the US, that have strong programs and worldwide reach. And there are some interesting numbers having to do with the rise in the dot-com bubble, and that even as the number of, like, in general, the rate of men that entered a computer science program rose at a higher rate than the rate of women that entered the university, even during that time period. And where am I again? Sorry. Okay. So we are getting towards the end. So here are some of the lessons that we've learned. It should be a lot of the same concepts that we've talked about. And hopefully I'll go through these and see if we did any of them. So the first one was to identify your audience. The experience level was definitely a major factor in developing curriculum. So whether they have no programming experience, so we've definitely done no programming experience, and then I've done experienced. The thing that we'd like to expand into in the future is kind of this intermediate level where they may have done some of the online courses, they may have done some examples or a project, and making that jump from beginning into a full-time development job, and kind of how we address that community as well. Okay. The goals of education, so this is the motivation thing. Are they looking for something job specific, theoretical, or are they willing and serious enough to work towards a real career change? Assessing the technical background, kind of what should we teach? So the major thing, especially when we're looking at grills or in frameworks in general, the web knowledge. So we start with, or Allison starts with HTML, CSS, and even like JavaScript there's a lot to kind of consider there. Tools as well, it was important that everybody kind of keep a similar environment. Our concepts here, remembering to define all jargon and acronyms, and particularly in examples, that things even coming from a math background were confusing for students. Having a standard development environment we found was a pretty important idea. And in the beginner class, we don't use an IDE, it's just a text editor. And of course, yeah, so these are all just text things that we can read through. Wi-Fi. And another thing that we found interesting was that if something happens to the Wi-Fi. The first one we did at the public library, and we overwhelmed their network. So it was just someone had suggested putting all of the downloadable files on a USB, and that worked out pretty well. So some beginner-specific hurdles. Of course, even from an attitude and psychology perspective, remember to be welcoming, and your assumptions, things that you may have learned a really long time ago, may seem simple to you, but difficult for a beginner. We found that the ratio of teaching assistants to students was another important factor. The more assistants per student was some common sense things there. It provides multiple viewpoints, and you get different analogies and explanations. So the language thing, and this goes back to the intro, that we found in our experience that some people may have taken an intro class and then dropped out because they didn't like Java. So I think it has a lot of potential there. Okay. So some current and ongoing challenges. Do we wait for everyone to keep up or catch up, or keep moving on? And of course, this is probably something a lot of people go through. How to budget time. We do weekend courses, so it's usually we can't even get through 8 hours. We found it after about 6 hours. It's just a lot of content, and everyone starts getting tired. So we ended up doing a follow-up session for one of the courses because we just didn't get through all the content. And after having several of these, what we've learned from some of the other groups in town that have done similar workshops is this idea of what we should do for the students that have repeated our courses but haven't reached the experience to advanced track. Okay. Any questions? Okay. I think we're ready for 5 minutes.